Vlad number 225. Welcome, my friend. There you go, folks. A little surprise, a little treat for you tonight. Welcome to the show. So they're going to arrest Vladimir Putin. That's what the story is, anyway. What we can tell you for sure is that for all of recorded history, tyrants have demanded at least three things from everyone in the realm. They want your property, your obedience, and ultimately they want your worship. So to build their new utopian, dystopian system, the climate kings today, or the green con artists, have to destroy these pillars of the previous civilization in order that they might be reborn or reset in the conquest of the people. But that's just a conspiracy theory. There's no great reset. You people are mad. We'll see about that. Our nation, culture, and traditions are currently being deconstructed in order to remove the United States from its position of dominance on the world stage. The United States must be brought down in order for the new multipolar world order of ultimately corporations ruling by governance, not government, but governance, to be established. So through the 2,500-year-old process that was outlined in The Art of War by Sun Tzu, demoralization, destabilization, crisis, and normalization. That's the process on the macro and the micro, on the overall scale over periods of years and decades, and even during the news cycle, during a week or during a day. The global elites are subversively fomenting a cultural revolution in order to replace this once great nation. They're going to replace it with something they can control, something they're in charge of, truly, which is a hyper-real new social contract, which will reimagine human liberty, reimagine economics. And you certainly see that playing out in the news cycle right now with banking chaos. And we'll be talking about that with you very soon here as well. This new social contract reimagines your mobility, where you can go, how often you can go, if you can go. It reimagines family. And of course, it reimagines faith, because faith is the foundation on which the nation and the multitudes within it have built their lives. But faith is being deconstructed and reconstructed into a communitarian state, which, if you're not familiar with the term, we have a lot of new viewers here with us. Communitarianism it's a deadly mixture, a totalitarian mixture of 20th century communism and fascism. Michael O'Fallon of Sovereign Nations has described it. He said, sadly, many of those trusted to guard our institutions of faith have been lured into the false promises of the societal reconstructionists. Leaders in the Southern Baptist Convention, for example, the PCA, the Presbyterian Church of America, of course, Pentecostals, Roman Catholics, and others have been brought into the schemes and strategies to reset our world. Here is a memorable, somewhat controversial quotation from 1801, just long about the time of the Second Great Awakening, actually, attributed to Sir Alexander Fraser Tytler. He said he was a professor of universal history at Edinburgh University. He said, a democracy cannot exist as a permanent form of government. Did you catch that? A democracy cannot exist. It can't remain as a permanent form of government. It can only exist until the voters, which include the leaders, until they discover that they can vote themselves money from that public treasury. From that moment on, the majority always votes for the candidates promising the most benefits from the public treasury, with the result that a democracy always collapses because of loose fiscal policy, which is what we see now. And then that loose fiscal policy is followed by dictatorship. The average age of the world's civilizations has been about 200 years, the greatest empires. These nations have progressed through this sequence that you see on your screen there. Typically, come out of a period of bondage into spiritual faith. From spiritual faith, they find their way to great courage. From great courage, liberty. And then from liberty, they discover abundance. And what comes with liberty, typically, it happened in the United States this way, is populism, or the idea that whatever most people think is true must be true, or whatever, the mob rules. And so this is where it starts to come off the rails at the stage of abundance, because Jeremiah 17:9, the heart is wicked, desperately so. You can't even really understand your own heart. Your emotions change from, minute to minute sometimes. So when we experience these periods of abundance, selfishness results. It's inevitable. It's our nature. So, period of abundance, the height of a civilization, selfishness, and then psychologically, people fall into complacency. From complacency, they stop caring, fall into apathy. From apathy, this is where it really gets dangerous. Then you become dependent. You can't take care of yourself anymore. You can't survive without that massive infrastructure any longer. And then from dependency, you're right back into bondage. What stage do you think we're in right now? Let's look at what's going on with Vladimir Putin here. Let's listen to the International Criminal Court. Let's see, I'm going to get the name of... Let's just let you hear. Let's let you hear this.
March 2023, the International Criminal Court has issued 2 warrants of arrest in the Ukraine situation for Vladimir Putin, President of the Russian Federation, and for Maria...
Just hang on a second here. We got a little problem. We've got some music. Hey, by the way, welcome to the show tonight. Here's my lovely wife, Summer. Summer, take it away.
Good to be here. It's like the Johnny Carson show tonight.
Yeah, we wanted to bring you some.
Well, Putin's going to jail just like Biden and his criminal family, right?
Right, they're going to jail.
Yeah, they're going to jail. Everybody get ready.
Remember? Don't you remember? Because, the Clintons, they got arrested and went to jail. Well, it was going to happen. Surely it's going to happen, right? Mm-hmm. Right. They're going to throw them all in jail.
Don't hold your breath.
Well, let's see what they're saying about Vladimir Putin. Let's try this again.
3. The International Criminal Court has issued 2 warrants of arrest in the Ukraine situation for Vladimir Putin, President of the Russian Federation, and for Maria Lvova-Belova, Commissioner of the Russian President for Children's Rights, for the alleged war crimes of deportation of children from Ukrainian occupied territories into the Russian Federation. It is forbidden by international law for occupying powers to transfer civilians from the territory they live in to other territories. Children enjoy special protection under the Geneva Convention. The contents of the warrants are secret in order to protect victims. The ICC attaches great importance to the protection of victims, especially children. Nevertheless, the judges of the chamber dealing with this case decided to make the existence of the warrants public in the interest of justice and to prevent the commission of future crimes. This is an important moment in the process of justice before the ICC. The judges have reviewed the information and evidence submitted by the prosecutor and determined that there are credible allegations against these persons for the alleged crimes. The ICC is doing its part of work. As a court of law, the judges issued arrest warrants. Their execution depends on international cooperation.
All right, so it depends on international cooperation. What that really means, who's going to be brave enough to go in there and get him? That's not going to happen. So this is just posturing. I guess it's all it can be. It's fastest way to get World War III going is to try to go in there and arrest Vladimir Putin. I think the people living under him are pretty comfortable and happy, so I think his military would probably be very loyal. In fact, Vladimir Putin has said, when we covered the Ukraine-Russia war last year about this time, he said in his in a speech right after the invasion, "I want to remind you that our country also has," he says, "I want to remind you, right, don't forget this, our country has various means of destruction more modern than those of NATO countries." I'm not sure that's exactly true. I don't think they have anything. They're bad enough, right? He says, "But to protect Russia and our people, we will certainly use all the means we have at our disposal." Well, thankfully, up to this point, he hasn't done that. But what does all this mean? Here's another story out of The Hague. That's where the International Criminal Court is. So the allegations that have to do with apparently bringing children from Ukraine back into the Russian Federation. We don't have any more information than that. You would think that what it is, it's whenever an area has been seized or taken and a battle has happened there and parents are killed, you can't just leave the children here to fend for themselves. Who knows? This could all be false. But this is the story. And since we're talking tonight about young global leaders, this is just something for you to look at over the next few days. Young global leaders. Just so happens that not that long ago, Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin was on the side of the World Economic Forum. He was a young global leader. Let's listen to Klaus Schwab tell you that much.
To create, let's say, fast-track growth for your country.
My commitment will be to add value. We'll be part of the Young Leaders Initiative.
This is Merkel, Tony Blair. They were all, even President Putin, they were all young global leaders before. So if I take you, if I take Chancellor Kurz and the new seal.
So there you go. Putin was a young global leader. What do you make of that, Summer? What do you make of the fact that Putin was a young global leader? What does that mean?
It means that we can't trust that he's supposed to be our enemy.
What? Come on now. That is very cynical approach. Very cynical approach. To say that we can't trust? Mm-hmm. these globalists. Come on, man.
I know. I mean,
you've really gone black pill.
Surely they've got pictures of him doing something he doesn't want discovered.
He's just about as indestructible as Donald Trump. But we'll see how that works out.
Well, he's a likable character. He speaks a lot of sense. He makes sense. But I don't trust it. I don't trust it.
Yeah, let me see. I've got this clip of Vladimir Putin that we played before, where he was just telling it like it is. It had to do with I probably don't need to waste time trying to hunt it down right now, but it was a speech where he was basically chastising the West for all the wokeness, the drag queen story hours, and it was
nice to hear.
Well.
It seemed like a sane thing to say.
It was exactly, yeah. It was exactly.
Or it is a sane thing to say.
He was speaking truth.
Yeah.
Разве мы хотим, чтобы в наших школах с начальных классов детям навязывали извращения, которые ведут к деградации и вымиранию? Чтобы им вдалбливали, что кроме женщины и мужчины, якобы существует.
Says I'd like a cheeseburger, an order of fries, and chocolate milkshake.
Еще некие гендеры и предлагали сделать операцию по смене пола.
Do we really want this for our country, he says, for our children? All this is unacceptable for us. We have our own different future.
Разве мы все этого хотим для своей страны, для своих детей? Для нас все это неприемлемо. У нас другое, свое будущее.
Such a total denial of human being is a rejection of faith and traditional values. See, that's how bad it's gotten in the United States. Right? We listen to Putin talk, and that sounds pretty good, doesn't it? Suppression of freedom begins to look like a perverted religion, outright Satanism. All right. So there's that. And not only that, that's one young global leader, at least at one point. They took his name off of the website. They don't list it anymore, but Klaus Schwab is very happy to tell you, at least he was a couple years ago. Riots in Paris. What's this got to do with the price of rice in China? Emmanuel Macron is a young global leader.
Mm-hmm.
Young global war criminals is what we are. What's going on here, Summer? Why is this happening to these leaders?
Because the people are upset that they're going to make their pension happen 2 years later. So it's basically stealing the money. And he just decided to come in and do that without anyone's permission. A lot like what Biden is doing, just signing things and doing things without anyone's consent.
Executive orders.
And people are angry.
Interesting. Executive orders. Dozens of arrests after new riots in Gay Paris. 5 police officers were injured. There's more. That's not a video. It tricked me. There's the same video. We've got others, but you can see there's it's going on for a couple days now there in Paris. Protesters against pension reform clash with riot police in Paris. It's not so much about the pension reform. It's about the fact, right, Summer? It's about the fact that he's ruling.
Yeah.
He's just dictating.
He's dictating.
Ruling by fiat. I think you can call that. Let's look at this. Well, for the most part, anyway, it looks like they're just kind of letting it happen. Okay. So this is going on in Paris.
And he was also an investment banker, at Rothschild's
Macron.
bank. Yeah.
Rothschild's connections. How about that?
Mm-hmm.
So you have to think, these guys they're not stupid. Certainly they could. Now there's another element to this. I was reading I haven't read this in depth at all, but there are some of the reports you'll find on Twitter here, people who are in and around Paris saying that in some cases the media might be making it look like that the riots are more widespread than they actually are. That sounds reasonable. So that's Macron, and there you go. There is Emmanuel Macron, Office of the President of the Republic of France. He is a young global leader. Now, what does that mean right now? Well, we just put the pin in the board.
Put the pin in the board.
And after a while, we see some kind of image emerge. Here's an interesting facet to the story. Now, at this time, when Jacques Chirac was in office in 2006 as the president of France, is that what they call him over there? Yeah, president. He gave Vladimir Putin the highest honor, an award that is the highest honor in France, when they had good relations, I guess. And now Macron is considering taking it away, except for the fact that, as it says in the article, Putin sends him vodka on his birthday. So they seem to have a relationship. And, of course, Macron is woke as they come, so he's going to be doing what is expedient in that way. But Zelensky's not happy about it. Zelensky said, look, we've got vodka too. We'll be happy to send you some vodka if you'll stop playing tiddlywinks with Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin. So that's...
These people.
Yeah, these people.
Good luck. We're all counting on you.
Right. Or we could just go with this.
What's wrong with you people?
Here you go. This is a look at young global leaders who are, and this is just scratching. Look at there's Gavin Newsom right in the middle. Bill Gates, George Soros. It just blows my mind. How I told Summer earlier that I think this man was 75 years old when he was born. So I don't know how he was ever. You have to be under 40 years of age to be a young global leader. So I don't know how Soros made the cut.
I know. I'm not sure about that.
Well, the thing is,
they just wanted to elevate it, just elevate the brand of it.
It was in the 90s when the when this thing started, when the young global leader.
Well, it's been around since the Henry Kissinger, actually.
The forum, the World Economic Forum has.
Yeah.
But the actual young global leaders arm of it.
Yeah.
I've got
the rebranding of it.
Yeah, I'll show you some. I've got some data on that here in a minute.
But maybe they're actually pulling him, like when he was doing it. It's before that, when it was under the other umbrella.
Yeah. Well, you can see there's Jacinda Ardern, Prime Minister of New Zealand. There's Trudeau, Macron, Boris Johnson.
All your favorite people.
Sebastian Kurz. There's Facebook's Mark Zuckerberg. Who else we got? There's some Pfizer. Alberts. Borea. Tedros is in the house. Tedros is in the house. Ursula von der Leyen, President of the European Commission. On and on to the break it on. There is Peter Buttigieg. Jagmeet Singh, he's a politician in Canada. And of course, the young and svelte George Soros. I don't know what he's doing on there, but there he is.
He just wanted to be there.
There he is. And here you see more shots of, there's Putin with Schwab. Young global leaders. What in the world?
Yeah, before it was like the international seminar, wasn't it?
Yeah, I can't remember.
I'll look it up real fast.
We've gone deep on
so
that.
So much
Summer
information
has.
in my brain.
Yeah, that's generally basically the story here about Klaus Schwab. You can go back and look at the show we did on Klaus Schwab, which was Johnny. What's Johnny's name?
Johnny Vedmore.
Johnny Vedmore, investigative journalist, independent.
Yeah, it was Kissinger's International Seminar. That's what it was called back in the day when it got started.
Funded by who? Partially funded by who?
CIA.
Oh, come on, man. You're just kidding.
Harvard.
Right. So.
Yeah, the program. So the Young Global Leaders program has quite a history before Klaus Schwab.
Elon Musk, right? The guy who's going to save the day. Well, the science is unequivocal. The science is, really. My mother would beg to differ. So anyway, there's the point here is, here's France. Is something's happening, and we've got to make some sense of it. That just looks like a party to me. It looks like the guys are having a good time. More France. Okay. So what does it all mean? Here is, now, what you hear is, there's no such thing. You guys are conspiracy theorists. There is no great reset. Look at this. The conspiracy theory is born. Proposals, along with the World Economic Forum itself, the proposals to fix the pandemic back in the day. This is an article from 2020, from I think around June of 2020, where Klaus Schwab just came out and announced his Great Reset initiative. And as the BBC reports, then the conspiracy theorists went nuts. Right? Because that's what they do when they want to make sure that that the masses don't pay much attention to a data point. They call it conspiracy theory, which is a concept born out of the what's it called, Rand Corporation. The Rand Corporation. The idea there was after the be careful with my words here. I don't want to.
I know you're.
Don't want to wake the algorithm up in that way. Kennedy. What happened to him in Dallas? There were a lot of people, even at the time, who didn't think that the official story was the true story on that one. And so the Rand Corporation, as a think tank, developed this term conspiracy theorist as a way to, as something to, as an albatross to hang around the neck of anybody who went against the official narrative, to make them look silly, to ostracize them. But of course, there is a great reset upon us.
We have an incredible opportunity to create entirely new sustainable industries, investing in nature as the true
Prince
engine
Charles,
of our economy.
The climate king.
The current global crisis has disrupted every aspect of our lives, but it has also presented us with an extraordinary opportunity.
Right, and that's the story, right? Look at this. It's just so, we're just so surprised by this catastrophe that's happened, but it sure is working out well for us, at least, for our plans.
Mm-hmm.
A chance to reset and accelerate efforts to improve the state of our world.
That's conspiracy theory. It's not true.
Changing our current trajectory will require bold and imaginative action, together with determination and decisive leadership. In order to secure our future and to prosper, we need to evolve our economic model, putting people and planet at the heart of global value creation. If there is one...
Put them at the heart of it.
That means micromanaging animals, plants, humans.
That's right.
All life forms, even tiny life.
You have to define the terms, right? They don't ever define their terms for us. So when they say putting people at the center of it, well, that's, why would you assume that that's a good thing? It sounds like it's a good thing, doesn't it? The phrase Brave New World is most famously the title of science fiction novel by Aldous Huxley, published in 1932. But that title was a phrase taken from Shakespeare's play The Tempest. It's used today, we hear it used ironically as the Brave New World, presented as a utopia that turns out, in fact, to be a nightmare in which human beings are trapped in a society where their humanity is simply deleted. So in The Tempest, Prospero, the rightful Duke of Milan, was banished by his usurping brother Antonio to a deserted island. There, Prospero lived and raised his daughter, Miranda. So as William Shakespeare's play opens, Prospero uses his powers. Prospero is a magician. He uses his powers, a sorcerer, to stir up a storm, a tempest, that shipwrecks a number of dignitaries from Italy, including Antonio and Alonso, the King of Naples. As the play progresses, Miranda, who has up to this point never seen a man other than her father, meets Ferdinand, son of the King of Naples, and falls in love. Near the play's end, Prospero confronts Antonio along with the others who were shipwrecked in the tempest. Miranda, upon seeing this whole entourage of people gathered, which she's never seen before, exclaims joyously, "Oh, wonder, how many goodly creatures are there here? Oh, brave new world that has such people in it." Miranda meant it seriously, but the mind behind Miranda's naive words, her naive observation, Bill Shakespeare, certainly intended her assessment to be ironic. Several hundred years later, Aldous Huxley entitled his vision of the future, Brave New World. Like Shakespeare, Huxley too meant those words ironically, meaning there's nothing brave about it. It's total subjection. Brave New World is Huxley's frightening vision of a world in which freedom is dead and all concepts of morality are forgotten. Life is manufactured and controlled from beginning to end by technocrats, by experts, and their technology. Huxley published his book in 1932, and it's uncanny how similar our world is today to that world which Huxley crafted just for literary impact, right? It would be conspiracy theory to suggest that was any kind of predictive programming, wouldn't it? John and Paul Feinberg wrote in their book, Ethics for a Brave New World, quote, "Within our lifetime, developments in technology have brought staggering changes to the way people can be conceived." See there on the today, what is it, Summer? How many babies can they
30,000? You mean the baby harvesting thing?
They have a capacity, yeah.
Yeah, 30,000.
Where's the facility? I just brought it up off just cold, but she's got 30,000 though.
I blocked it out.
It's Germany. Is it not Germany?
Somewhere in Europe, I believe, yeah.
One of those places.
I'll look it up.
So that you don't have, because you're going to see as we move along through this tonight, it's no secret. We've seen now the family has to be done away with, because the family, that is the root. That is the foundation. Faith is the foundation of liberty, freedom, of all things that are beautiful and wise. And the family is how those beautiful and wise ideals are lived out. That can't exist anymore. So they're finding ways now to, right? Because in the new economy, mothers, you'll see this later too, mothers are not allowed to be mothers. They're not going to be managing the home anymore. For some reason, our society looks on that as demeaning somehow. I mean, it's one of the most important duties that exist. It's indispensable, in fact. Within our lifetime, developments in technology have brought staggering changes to the way people can be conceived. And that's one of the things they're pushing for, is everyone's going to have their little job, right? You're going to be trained what to think, not how to think. You're going to be trained what to do, not how to take care of yourself or start your own business. People can be conceived and born outside of the womb. Now, with Dave Rubin and his man mate, right? They had one woman give them, I think it was one woman donated the eggs, both the guys donated the seed, and then two different women would carry the babies, and they would have two children. And so this is what I mean. Except they want to even take it further than that, further away from humanity than that, and just grow them in pods. That's what Summer's talking about. Capacity of 30,000 in this article we were.
Yeah, it's a concept, so they're promoting the idea of it.
Yeah, it's not functioning yet.
Ecto-life.
And we did a show, ectogenesis. That's what it's called. Is when the baby is grown outside of the womb, right? So that, obviously, so that the mother can continue her career. Evaluating the darkness of the world against the truth of Scripture enables us to determine the rightness or wrongness of what is and how we should live in light of it. More than ever, there's a contention, even among Christians, about how we should live in the changing world in regard to advancements of technology and new possibilities in controlling life and death. Most of the developments in technology couldn't even have been foreseen or addressed by writers of Holy Scripture. But because of this, some may think that it's really impossible for us as Christians, apologists, polemicists, to even address these issues. We don't agree with that. Scripture doesn't address these issues specifically, but Scripture has addressed every bit of relevant truth that there is. It set forth enough principles about life and death and a citizen's relation to government that it's possible to evaluate contemporary practices in light of biblical teaching. So it's not only possible to address these matters biblically, it's required. It's mandatory that we do it, because we live in a pluralistic society. And in a pluralistic society, Christians can't assume that others, our children included, will actually be exposed to right teaching. Right? A student is not greater than his or her teacher. Eventually, that student will become like their teacher. Right? That's called discipleship. And in our nation, most of the children are being discipled by the state. today. That's why we are where we are. Let's just call it like it is. So, Christians, we have to speak about these topics. We have to educate one another, lest we find out, too, when it's too late, that a morality that's foreign to Scripture has not only won the day, but has even been enacted as the law of the land. So let our judgments be determined by Scripture and its application through reason, and always in that order, never the other way around. Our judgments are determined by Scripture, and the application is applied through reason. When anyone exclaims Brave New World today, they're usually expressing a cynical attitude about something like a controversial issue, such as governments merging man and machine to create super soldiers, or new worldwide mass experiments in gene therapy under the guise of inoculation. So today, when that happens, people may say, oh, Brave New World. It generally refers to an era characterized by feelings of hope because of some societal changes, but with the fear that it's not going to go well, right? Like we have. So much potential for so much good. But our technology is being used to enslave us when it could be used to free us. Another way of expressing the irony of the phrase is its reference to changes that are meant to improve people's lives, but which will bring additional problems with it. Golden handcuffs, it's known as. It could also mean simply a bleak, dismal future. And that's what Huxley envisaged in his novel, a future in which human beings, with all their innate creativity and individualistic instincts, are grown in laboratories designed to fit into different types of lifestyles, which will perform different particular jobs in society. Some will be slight build, some will be strong framed, with no chance of operating outside of those classes. Huxley said of his book, he commented, he was surprised himself, in his comments anyway, that fictional dystopian world was realized, has been realized so fast. So this is what he said in Brave New World Revisited. He said, the society described in Brave New World is a world state in which war has been eliminated, and where the first aim of the rulers is at all costs to keep their subjects from making trouble. They achieve this by, among other means, by legalizing a degree of sexual freedom made possible by the abolition of family. That practically guarantees the Brave New Worlders against any form of destructive or creative emotional tension. In 1984, the lust for power is satisfied by inflicting pain, right? 1984 is the jackboot style. Brave New World, it's different. It's inflicted by a hardly less humiliating pleasure. The future dictator's subjects will be painlessly regimented by a corps of highly trained social engineers, experts. The challenge of social engineering in our time, writes an enthusiastic advocate of this new science, is like the challenge of technical engineering 50 years ago. If the first half of the 20th century was the era of the technical engineers, the second half may well be the era of the social engineers. In the 21st century, I suppose, will be the era of world controllers. This is Huxley speaking. In other words, it's the scientific caste system in Brave New World. And that's what we're looking at today. Young global leaders, because there's an article that we want to check out that just came out a couple days ago.
Forbes
says the world needs inspired young leaders who can bridge divides, and create real world change. Let me try to find that. Yeah, I lost my artwork somewhere.
Oh no.
Hey, there we go.
There it is. Yeah, they just put that out a couple of days ago. So in the midst of the banking collapse, they're trying to put this PR move out here to recruit more young global leaders in Forbes.
Right. So I think that what we can do with this article is we can tell you what's coming. We can make a decent prediction because this article came out on 14th of March. And as a search, just using Forbes only, there was another article in 2020. That was August of 2020. You remember what happened in 2020, right? This was in August. It says how young leaders can help us reset for the future. This language was ready to go when the pandemic started. So before I get to the current article, which we're gonna shred that for you.
Dissect and dice.
Yes. In 2020, they wrote, if there is one truth that has been illuminated by the COVID-19 pandemic, I'm just going to say it, I guess, it is that our previous systems were neither equitable or sustainable. So there are terms that should be defined. And they have been defined in one place, is in Klaus Schwab's manual, his booklet titled COVID-19 Great Reset. More pertinent than ever, it is that we continue our fight to improve the state of the world. What you want to listen for here is there's value judgments all over the place to improve the state of the world. That requires a standard. You're going to improve it from what to what? According to whose standard? Who's going to decide that what you did was an improvement? Do we get to decide? As such, the World Economic Forum has launched a new initiative, The Great Reset. Through mobilizing our incredible group of leaders, which includes these young global leaders, and young global shapers is another group, we seek to reset how governments, industries, and organizations at large craft a joint future. We're going to reset the way people think, right? The way they live, the way they bank. They even brag here and saying in the 25 years prior to setting the Sustainable Development Goals, we nearly halved the number of people living in extreme poverty and vaccinated 80% of 1-year-olds. So the assumption is, well, that's good. That's good that you vaccinated 80% of 1-year-olds. Why did they do it? For health, obviously, right? So, no, it says here they did it so they can create a more equitable world. Equitable world. Equitable is not the same thing as equal, right? In America,
it's going to be the haves, and the have-nots.
Yeah, equity implies everyone's going to
all of us on one
be given.
level.
Yeah, they're going to be given the same stuff. Equality of outcome, which should never be guaranteed, or you don't have freedom. Equality means everyone has the same opportunities, and it's up to them to perform. But they say, of course, COVID-19 has caused problems. It has slowed us down. But we can choose a different path, they say. Transition towards more balanced and compassionate workplaces. Listen to the value judgments. Balanced and compassionate. To mend political fractures, mitigate violence that results from growing populism, and to pivot toward a nature-based economy. Nature-based economy, which they define
Mother Gaia worship.
Well, yeah, it's all over the place. Mm-hmm. I think they mean by nature-based economy. They've in the next sentence here it says it prioritizes the human relationship with nature. No. What that actually means is that you're not allowed to go into nature because you're bad for nature. You harm nature. That's what they will say. And it's an indication, they say, of how dramatically and quickly we could shift the threat of human behavior to nature. The Forum of Young Global Leaders supports a comprehensive Great Reset. They have a 3-part methodology. One of them is young global leaders have been at the forefront of tackling misinformation. So there's the Ministry of Truth.
And that misinformation thing, they are really just hammering away at that in all of their treaties and zero draft and their global report that came out recently about how they're going to get a handle on that, this misinformation, disinformation thing.
Yeah.
So
the other part of that, we've talked about this, the whole idea of pre-bunking, getting out there ahead of any potential conspiracy theorists. Also, one of the second methodology is cultivating responsible leadership, right? Through sustainability and trust. When they say sustainable development, understand what sustainable means. It means to sustain the status quo as far as those people are in power. Sustain our power. It's kind of like when you see the term carbon. We want to reduce carbon. We want to reduce carbon footprint. The carbon they want to reduce is you. It's population. Necessarily it has to be, because human beings are causing the trouble, they say. Well, they want leaders to lead responsibly. Listen to this. The program aims to equip young global leaders with the skills, attitudes, and capabilities required to lead responsibly. Once again here, folks, this is the same way when they go into a village in Africa and train up the people. Same thing. They train the young global leaders the same way. They don't train them how to think. They train them what to think. Thirdly, their third methodology is inclusive action. Now, there's one of those Orwellian words, inclusive action. It's not inclusive at all. It includes all of those who don't challenge. To ensure that no one is left behind. That's what inclusivity means. It's what would be a better word, Summer? Right. They have to bring everybody. What no one left behind means is everyone's going to be
in the grid, in the web,
in the camp, right, in the camp,
tracked and traced.
Yeah, that's what inclusivity means. It says here that in the Kakuma,
taxed, everybody's going to be taxed,
exacted.
Mm-hmm.
In the Kakuma refugee camp, a group of young global leaders have focused to ensure that no one is left behind. Advancing access to education and skills. So listen to this. Advancing access to education and skills, internet, and viable work to support the community and participate in the global economy. So they go into the Kakuma refugee camp and they want to help everybody to participate in the global economy. That's not what they need. What they need are the skills and the support to have a local economy. Right? So right here in the art, it's just passed over. The most obvious and truly good, caring, loving, moral response would be to help these people to have their own local economy. No, they're going to go in there and train them how to participate in the global economy. That tells you a lot right there. And they're still training the people what to think, not how to think. So it goes on to say that they want the Forum of Global Leaders is committed to realizing a world in which no one is left behind. So the point of this is that all will have exactly the same outcomes, not the same opportunity. There's only one way to do that. There's only one way to ensure that everyone has the same outcome. That would be control. That would be totalitarianism. Submission to a new standard that they will define. A new standard that will be defined by those who have the power, and it will be for their benefit. You've heard the parable, right? Give a man a fish, feed him for a day, teach a man to fish, feed him for a lifetime. So that was 2020. In January of this year, January 10th of this year, another one similar came out. This one was a new era for youth activism and world leaders. Young innovators, activists, and entrepreneurs are leading movements and solutions to manifest a more inclusive, sustainable, and resilient world. Again, these terms, they just throw them out there as though everyone knows what they mean by them. You can't assume the common meaning of the word sustainable, for example. What are we sustaining? Well, it's assumed that they mean we're sustaining the planet. That's not what sustainable means in this regard. When you look at the policies and you listen to what they say, what they're sustaining is power. So what they're doing here is they're exalting these young people for their activism, right? It says here that they've spent the last several years, raising their voices, honing their messages and their abilities, building resources and networks, and improving their activism. Is that where right? That's what we'll have is an activist culture. Who's gonna make the goods? Who's going to produce what we need to live? Everybody's an activist. Activism is a moral enterprise, and it's not neutral. So once again, there's value judgments inherent here. And they say that their goal is to improve lives and protect the planet. So there is the stated goal. Improve lives. Improve. Who's going to decide whether what they choose to do is actually an improvement? It's not going to be you or me. It's not going to be us. It's in Agenda 21, or what they call today United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. It says equity and dignity in the workplace is what they're shooting for. Well, but when they say to improve the lives and protect the planet, let's just stop. That's a double bind. That's one of the old double binds. In other words, they're saying one thing and they expect you to respond to it that way while they mean something else. And so you're going to be bound up in their system thinking that it's for your benefit. They want to promote equity and dignity in the workplace, environmental justice. And so they wanted this year, that was the point in Davos for the young global leaders and the global shapers. It says 50 of these young leaders, these young global shapers, will shake up the World Economic Forum's annual meeting in 2023, which is taking place in Davos, or did in January. Right? They're going to go there and shake it up. What do you think, Summer? They're going to go there and shake up the most heavily secured meeting in the world. They're going to shake it up, man. We don't know what they might do.
So rebellious.
Right? Yeah. They're working within strict parameters.
I'm looking at the just as a refresher here of our memory, is Klaus Schwab, founder and executive chairman of the World Economic Forum, created the Forum of Young Global Leaders in 2004.
Yeah.
So that's when he came on the scene, is 2004.
With the Young Global Leaders.
Yeah.
Well, they go on to talk here in this article. Let me skip through this stuff. Climate and nature is one of their major points. Oh, this is a good point here. It says youth messages are science-based, right? They're saying, look, these kids, these young people that we've picked out here, their messages are based in science. In fact, today's activists, today's young people have a zero tolerance policy for misinformation and toxicity or discrimination in media. Notice what they don't say here. They don't say that today's activists have a zero tolerance for lies. They have a zero tolerance for people who play hard and fast with the truth or are loose with the truth. They don't say that, right? They call it misinformation. They don't call it untruth. There's a reason for that. It's because what they're presenting you is a new standard, a new unified corpus of truth that isn't necessarily true, but it is the information, and anything that doesn't agree with that is misinformation, and therefore it has to be treated as harmful, even if it's true, right? If the fact is that wearing a mask around all day it's not actually a healthy thing for you to do, and it's not going to protect you from some ailment. Let's just don't be too specific here. If you find out that that's actually the truth, that's actually what the science says, that's actually what the data indicates, but the narrative or the information is that it is righteous and good.
Caring,
yes. Right, you're a good citizen if you wear the mask all day, even in your car when you're by yourself. Well, that's the information. Doesn't matter if it's true or not, that's the information. If you come out telling the truth about it, doesn't matter that what you're saying is the truth, it's misinformation.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so so they don't use the word truth. They say youth activism is empathetic, inclusive, and intergenerational, and that they have learned lessons. These activists have learned lessons from the achievements and mistakes of its ancestors.
Yeah, remember when we went into that deep dive about their obsession with empathy, how you're supposed to empathize?
Yeah.
So programming everybody into that hive mind.
The idea, with empathy and sympathy, what they're trying to teach people today is that sympathy is a good thing. It's been a perfectly good word to use for all the hundreds of years, or 1,000 years that the word has existed, however long it has. I didn't look that up. But
sympathy, but they've definitely weaponized it.
Well, they've weaponized it by bringing the word empathy doesn't have as deep a history as sympathy. It's maybe less than 100 years it's been used. But here's the point. Sympathy is a perfectly good word. If I sympathize with you in your struggle, that's a compassionate act. But what they're training people to do today is to empathize with it, to actually go in to that struggle and struggle with the person. The analogy that we paint for this one is that someone's drowning in a river. Let's say it's whitewater, and they're hanging on to a branch.
You better get in the water with them and hang on to the branch with them.
All right. Sympathy would be, all right, let me get this float, this inner tube or this, what do you call the thing that you throw someone?
Yeah,
life preserver. The life preserver.
Life preserver, yeah.
Let me get this life preserver or this long stick. Let me throw it to you or give you the stick or a rope, and I can pull you out. That would be sympathy. I see you're in trouble, and I'm going to try to do something reasonable to help you. Empathy says, no, let me dive into the water and just sit there and hold you as we both die.
Mm-hmm.
So that's not a textbook definition of sympathy and empathy, but that's the way they're presenting it. That's the way they want us to be thinking. Silly. So they say business leaders must, now they talk about keeping the global warming below 1.5 degrees Celsius. Look, that number been debunked over and over. I've got a book on the shelf behind us here called Fossil Future.
But, because science.
Right. Remember, it's not about what is true. It's not about the true data. It's about the information. And whatever the information is, it's their gospel. We encourage you to check out a book by Alex Epstein called Fossil Future, where he actually a website too. If you'll just look up his name, you'll find his website. He's got a page on his website there where it gives just tons of quick responses to people who barrage you with all these programmed climate change stats and figures. So we move on from that. You can check out our show called Net Zero Suicide for that. There, I did it. I said it all in those words. So they want business leaders, listen to this, business leaders must decarbonize. Remember what we said earlier, right? You have to reduce the carbon, reduce people. But business leaders must decarbonize. Policymakers must incentivize sustainable consumption, penalize production that's not sustainable. Financial institutions must refuse to bankroll anyone who is initiating fossil fuel use. Folks, the evidence is clear. The way to a more prosperous and cleaner future for the planet is through fossil fuels. Now, of course, if there are other methods, if nuclear should be being used a lot more, if there are surely, stop calling me Shirley. Surely, the breakaway civilization of billionaires has access to technology that no one's going to see for another 20 or 30, maybe 50 years. So there are some methods of energy production out there that would look like magic today that they're kind of holding back. Because look, if energy was essentially free, that would basically take all the power away from those globalists. So they want to penalize production of anything that doesn't go along with our standards. They want to incentivize
what they're doing. Sorry to interrupt.
No, go ahead. I got to get some water.
Made me think about the EPA and the article that just came out this past week where they're talking about there's all these forever chemicals that are in the water. We made a post about this in our community section of YouTube, and they're like, oh no, forever chemicals. They cause cancer and they cause heart disease. And so we're going to get in there and we're going to make your water safe. And by the way, it's going to cost more. And by the way, this is us telling you that we're going to regulate the water. So they're taking control of the water. You betcha.
No doubt about it.
Scary.
So here's the example of how they go into an area and train people. Frontier technologies, for example. Frontier technologies have the potential to relieve painful crises, but they say they can address food insecurity, energy demands, can prevent epidemics and pandemics. However, they also jeopardize personal freedom. So listen to this. These young global leaders, these activists, want technology developers to adhere to, and policymakers must enforce, a strict do not harm principle. Which means young people are calling for internationally validated and ratified Universal Declaration of Digital Rights. That's because everyone has to be connected. Because ultimately you're going to be connected with biosecurity. Yeah. Brain's not completely with me right now. It's late.
It's been a long day.
So, but here's this person who goes, Miriam Nuria Kone, the founder of Hackily, which I guess is a website or something, where she trains hundreds in digital literacy and market-ready skills to ensure that women are at the forefront of technological innovation and development in Africa. Well, that sounds nice, right? We're going to train these folks so that they can participate in the global economy. That's not what they need. They need a strong local economy. But what do you hear about this? She goes and trains people in digital literacy and market-ready skills to ensure that women are at the forefront of the industry. Right? So that who can have children? Who can be a mother? Very interesting. Family is just not important. In fact, they go into these villages and these places and train the people how to not have a family. That's what's really happening. The only way, like they talk about bullying a lot in this. The only way really to stop bullying at all is to halt the activities. We're talking about in schools. To stop bullying, you have to stop the free movement of kids, and you have to control their interactions with surveillance. Right? That's, you see, we're surveilling everything because we're stopping bullying. Look, I think we can deal with some bullies. Right? We can handle a few bullies. What our problem is our absolute loss of freedom. The true bully is the surveillance system. So they say too, they want to make foundational learning sites free to access. That was the idea somewhere of we're going to always be learning. Mm-hmm. Right, and not in the positive sense. So
anything that you learn will be irrelevant very soon. So you better stay in their little network of. It's just like a software upgrade, right? They're just going to be treating human beings like software upgrades.
They say we have to put human flourishing first. I ask, why? Why should we put human flourishing first? Now, I believe that we should strive for that. But why do they believe human flourishing should be put first? Based on what? On what standard? Who decided? Does anyone disagree? What is human flourishing? According to them, human flourishing is when you go into an area, you go into a village, and you teach the women there how to not be mothers anymore. That's flourishing. You see what we're talking about here? These terms don't mean what you think they mean. They want to invest heavily in prevention of large-scale emergencies and pandemics, of course. And the way they want to do that is by depoliticizing public health, by bringing scientific fact back into vogue. Fair enough. How do you do that? How do you breathe? And it's interesting again. Did you catch the language? They want to bring scientific fact back into vogue. Not the truth, whatever the fact is. You can make up the facts. You can create. See, again, it's about the information, not the truth. So we want to bring scientific fact back into vogue. So what that requires is truth. Like if you want to actually adhere to the scientific method and honor what the laws of the universe show us in experiments and the data, then you have to live by truth. That's not what they want. They want to live by the facts. So what they're aiming for here is something called positivism, and that is the idea that nothing supernatural is relevant, and we don't even talk about it. And that's because they want to be God. So trust and good governance was the last piece on there. I just want to tell you here, governance is not government. Governance is something that's decided way beyond you. Governance is what corporations do. Like, for instance, when you go into Best Buy store or your local supermarket, there are expectations, there are rules there for the employees and for how you can behave. That's governance. You didn't get to vote on any of that. You didn't get to decide how that was going to go down. So they try to run a nation according to governance, where they're going to decide for you what's best. Because, as we talked about here many times before, democracy is just too damn slow. We can't wait for you people to decide what you want to vote on. Things get caught up in committee. Congress gets deadlocked on issues. That's just too slow. We have to decide for you. The book on the shelf back here, 2052 by Jorgen Randers. They talk about that. We have to get rid of democracy because democracy is too slow, and we have to act fast because the planet, right? So the article that we're talking about here today, I'm really not going through this fast at all.
You are not.
Part of what we were going to do here with this show tonight is work on delivering the info a little more in a more concise fashion.
You're very meticulous.
Well, you know what? I think this stuff is so important that it needs to be. Tell me, how do you do it, Summer? How do you make sure someone gets the message?
Tell them what you're going to tell them, and then tell them what you told them.
That's my teacher right there. So that's what I try to do, and it takes a while. So the article here, the world needs inspired young leaders who can bridge divides and create real world change. So let's look at the title. The world needs inspired young leaders. Inspired by what? Okay, inspired young leaders who can bridge divides. What kind of divides? And how are we bridging it? And create real world change. So that's probably the more important one right there. Those two words, real and change. Real world change. Of course, it's about the world. And we want to change something. And we want to make sure that change is real. So what do they mean by real here? Well, they mean good, according to their standard. Let's not say good. Let's say approved.
Yeah.
And so let's do what we do. Let's analyze the narrative. Let's go back and say that last sentence and create real world change. Okay, so it's not real, it's approved. So we want to create approved world change. What do they mean by change? They mean a certain order, right? A new order. This predetermined order. So it says the world needs inspired young leaders who can bridge divides and create approved world order. That's the translation, right? To create approved world order. But of course, it's always hidden in the language. So what they say here in this article is that there's a new generation of compassionate leaders willing to do whatever is needed to improve the state of the world. All right, son. What's the issue with that statement? They want to do whatever is needed to improve the state of the world.
Well,
it's another value judgment.
It is.
They want to improve. That means to take something from
you.
To take some. Well, just generally, yes, it is. But in general, to improve something is to take something from a state that's not approved to where it's approved. From not good to good. Mm-hmm. From unapproved to approved. So we want to do whatever is needed to bring the state of the world into a condition that we approve of. That's what they mean there. So these value judgments they're throwing out there, we just have to get down to the bottom of what is their worldview. If we know what their worldview is, we can know exactly what they mean by all these terms, and we can see the future right in front of us. So this article says some interesting things, giving young people a space to learn and lead. What that essentially means is they're going to train these young people to do what they had planned from 1972 on, right? These kids are not going in there making their own decisions there. They're being trained what to think, not how to think. What makes a young global leader? Well, bloodlines. Is that you have to be.
Well, you've got to be a true believer.
Yeah, to be a true believer, you got to be a bloodliner. So the article says the main characteristic of a young global leader is having the capacity and resilience to deal with different risks simultaneously, having the capacity to deal with what is known as VUCA: vulnerability, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity. Oh, this stuff gets boring until you get down to the important meat. They say they really stress the importance of intergenerational dialogue. So they also say you must hire more young people. One of the important points that I didn't cover, one of those other articles there, was they said that there's a problem because in some of these major corporations, what was it? There isn't a CEO under 50 years old. Right? There's a reason why you can't be president in the United States unless you're over 35 years old. It's because experience matters. Time on the planet matters. Let's see if I can find that quote because it's pretty good.
Well, the other thing is too is we know that that Chat GPT, right? That you've been checking that out recently.
Playing around with it a lot. Yeah.
Right, but that's apparently at Davos this year. They were all excited about Chat GPT, and of course they are, because apparently this AI tool its baseline programming is with all of their values, if you will. Air quotes.
Values. Their values.
Yeah, so that's another one of their ways that they can infiltrate the consciousness of everybody on the planet, right? The AI has a baseline that's been programmed by their ideals, right? Their standard.
It is, ultimately, it's a religion. It's an ideology, but it is a religion. Right, because it takes a full commitment. It takes faith to follow it. Young people bring to the table discussions that many of their older counterparts still see as taboo. Right? Don't you realize that morality is always evolving? Have you ever heard that? That's what they believe. That's what they preach. If that's true, do you see the problem? If morality evolves and grows with us as we progress,
as we ascend.
Today we've just had the Respect for Marriage Act, or a few months ago, be passed, where marriage between one man and one woman has now been undefined. Marriage can literally in the act, marriage is defined by whatever state the marriage.
Love is love, right?
Right. Whatever
according
state.
According to Biden as well.
Yeah, we did that. We
did that already.
We debunked the whole love is love thing. Right. Love is love, until you're breaking the law, until you're breaking moral codes. So they tend to stand up for their values, and they actively think of building bridges rather than destroying them. These are just platitudes. So let's get to the meat here. How young global leaders can change the world. With so much diverse talent between them, it's hard to single out one or young global leaders above another, as they're all doing an amazing job and their stories speak for themselves. Meanwhile, in Brazil, Maria Vasconcelos, CEO and founder of AgroSmart, the largest agricultural data network in Latin America. The platform collects and processes data to generate insights that support 100,000 farmers in making data-driven decisions. Data-driven decision, that's just a fancy way.
You can't argue with the data. You know, we're sorry if you don't want to do that regulation or that mandate, but, you know, the data says what it says, and so...
Wouldn't you rather farmers make truth-driven decisions? But that's not how they speak. It's data-driven. I know there's a reason for that. Someone would argue it's because we're dealing with figures and percentages.
Figures and percentages that we can alter.
Right. Exactly. They can make those figures say whatever they want. That's why we have to live by truth and not by experts. So, let's see. This platform collects 100,000 farmers' decisions overcoming the uncertainty of climate and climate change. Born in a refugee camp and raised in Uganda's civil war, young global leader Victor Ochin founded the African Youth Initiative Network, human rights organization that has provided reconstructive medical repair and psychological assistance to more than 21,000 victims of rape, mutilation, and other violence during war. There's a lot missing in that description. Once again, you see how we go into these areas and train people to live according to the new religion. In Japan, this person whose last name is Shin, founded Gojo & Company to promote financial inclusion by creating the private sector version of the World Bank. Today, it serves over 1.2 million households and provides its clients with financial products like insurance and energy loans. These are just some of the achievements and stories of young global leader alumni who have sought to make the world a better place. We need to continue listening to young people, as they are the ones with fresh ideas and the ones who are going to be living with the consequences of any decisions made now. Right? That's how communitarianism works. We're doing all of these things for the people in the future, because how can you argue with that? What are you, some kind of what are you, a heel? Do you hate people? What, you don't care about the people who come after you? False paradigm. You see, that's how they're appealing to emotion. Meanwhile, they don't care about the people coming in. What they care about probably is maybe their own bloodline remaining in
well, what they care about is getting everybody into a tracking and tracing digital dollar.
No doubt.
So that then you won't open your mouth, or you'll think twice before you open your mouth.
Yeah. We're going to skip the mass formation psychosis here tonight because we want to get out of here. But through its Young Global Leaders Program, the World Economic Forum has been instrumental in shaping a world order that undermines all democratic principles. And by democratic principles, we mean to say truly libertarian principles. We mean biblical principles, where private property is respected. It's a sacred right. For several decades, this program has nurtured compliant leaders acting as World Economic Forum agents in governments around the world. The consequences are far-reaching and may turn out to be devastating for humanity. So, as someone already mentioned, in '92, Klaus Schwab and the WEF launched a program initially called Global Leaders Tomorrow. It became the Forum of Young Global Leaders, and since its inception, has included more than 2,700 politicians, business leaders, royalty, journalists. They're in the media too. Performers and other cultural influences from all over the world who have excelled in their fields but have not yet turned 38 years of age. Originally, it was 43 years of age, to include Angela Merkel and Vladimir Putin. So that's just a little background for it. But the network creates a force for worldwide influence through the combination of the individual skills and resources of its members. As Klaus Schwab says, it has become very successful. Already in the first year, 1992, a number of highly influential candidates were elected. Among 200 selected were global profiles such as Angela Merkel, Tony Blair, Nicolas Sarkozy, Bill Gates, Bono, Richard Branson, and on down the line. Everyone who's anyone.
Yeah, I'm looking here at Wikipedia Young Global Leaders, and it is really it's worth noting that the way that they describe it, the history, they say the program was founded by Klaus Schwab of the Economic Forum in 1993 under the name Global Leaders for Tomorrow, and was renamed to Young Global Leaders in 2004. But of course, they don't talk about the real history of it, the true history.
From Harvard?
From Harvard,
all the way
from
back?
Kissinger, yeah.
They don't mention Kissinger at all, do they?
No. So little scrub, just an example of things being scrubbed.
The World Economic Forum would not exist.
Things being obscured.
It wouldn't exist if not for Kissinger.
Exactly.
So, for instance, Justin Trudeau, World Economic or a young global leader, during the Canadian trucker protest for the lockdowns and how they were destroying the economy, he did his part. Under the Emergencies Act, government introduced measures intended to cut off protesters' funding. Took steps to reinforce provincial and local law enforcement with federal police. So somebody mentioned that earlier. We were talking about it. One of the most important or most effective means that they have are these emergency powers, right? Mm-hmm. That is what we've seen. That's what the whole pandemic was.
Yeah, you spring emergency powers on people, and then you come in and you change the law.
Public health crisis.
Yeah.
It's a public health crisis.
Definitely.
And so when that is announced, all kinds of things go into play that were set up took decades to get it all in place. But today, when a public health emergency is declared, your nation isn't sovereign anymore. That's the pandemic treaty, which we'll be talking about too.
Right, and we're coming into, when we get into the show about the banking crisis, how that's going to come into play again.
Let's jump to, let's look at one of these young global leaders who we've covered here before. Lucian.
Yeah, this is for, we talked about it, we're like for our new viewers that might not be aware of sort of the young global leader culture. What they're about, kind of what the flavor is. Lucian Tarnowski is really good at teaching us that.
What you have to know, the background you need here is what play-to-earn gaming can tell us about the future of the digital economy and the metaverse. So, gamifying the world, basically, is what we're talking about. And this is what Lucian Tarnowski is going to be talking about it. The United Planet game. Play-to-earn games can bring digital identity, assets, and ownership into players' hands as the gaming industry is becoming decentralized. No, it's not.
I know.
These games are also spearheading a recent development, the increasing convergence of the physical and digital worlds, and that's the point. So let's listen to, look at this dashing, handsome young man here with
charming.
Well said. Charming. Where's this? I don't know. That's not a horse riding hat, is it?
No.
Let's listen to a couple minutes of this, and you'll get an idea of what we're talking about. This is the plan that they have for you.
Well, don't you want to start it around 40 seconds?
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah, let it start it around there.
Absolutely. Let's do that.
So the Up game, it's a time-traveling immersive reality game where we bring leaders.
Let me slow it down. The Up game is a
Yeah, you got to listen to this. Yeah. Listen carefully.
This is the future of how everything is going to be done. It's going to be when you shop online, it's going to be gamified. It's and how we solve problems in the world, how they aim to solve problems in the world. It'll be through a gamified process to the solution,
which is really a mechanism for compliance.
Yeah.
Obligations and incentives.
I'm afraid that before long, that's what my hair is going to look like, and it's.
Well, you won't let me get near you with the scissors, so.
No. All right. Lucian Tarnowski, everyone.
Sure. So the Up game, it's a time-traveling immersive reality game where we bring leaders, creators, change makers, artists, musicians into the future where we are living in a world that's thriving. So it's essentially, we go into the next system, and what we do is we apply our collective intelligence through play and creativity. We apply our collective intelligence to develop the stories as to how we got there. And then from the stories, we reverse engineer the strategies. And from the strategies, we tie funding milestones from the future. So we're essentially turning the direction of money from going from the present moment towards the future to coming from the future, pulling the present towards it. And it's working beautifully.
Okay, so I want to hear, you've traveled back in time to be with us here.
Problem here is, sounds great, right? It's a pretty brilliant idea. What's the variable that's not being mentioned here? What hasn't been? At least he hasn't yet. It's human beings. Everything else can be controlled, right? Pretty easily. Technology could certainly be controlled and limited, but the human creature is unpredictable. And the human creature is the only unknown variable in his equation for solving global problems. By imagining yourself in the future and solving problems by imagining you're looking back on a problem and solving it with solutions that exist in that time.
Yes, and it's very much the belief that you create your reality and you create your destiny and you're manifesting.
Well, to make all this happen, you have to have the human creatures somehow become predictable. That's why we gamify. That's why we put people inside the hyperreal system where we're gamifying everything. You're not there doing it. You're doing it through your avatar inside the hyperreal system. And inside the hyperreal system, you have many limitations, right? You can't do what you want, think what you want. You're limited. And ultimately, that's how they want life to be,
right?
Very regimented.
They understand about psychology. Actually, one of the first World Health Organization directors was charged with using psychiatry to go out there and convince the rest of the world that good and evil did not exist. So that was the charge. That was the main charge in the 40s of psychiatry.
Yeah, psychiatry becomes a whole lot easier when you don't have to worry about morality, right? You can do whatever you like, MK Ultra.
And so tell us some of those stories from the future, how they've played out, and then how we're now funding to get there.
Yeah, so the way the game works is we create a mythology around the elements. So we have the air team, which is all about all life thriving.
All right, the alchemical mandate, right? You need to pay attention to this. The air team is going to have earth, air, fire, and water. All right. We all understand what that is, right? Those are the elements, and that's the reason those are being used is because Lucian Tarnowski himself is an occultist. All right, that wouldn't necessarily mean that all of his intentions were ultimately evil, but we believe they are. Not because he believes he has an evil intention. I'm convinced that he thinks he's doing the best, that he's doing the right thing for the world. but it's according to his own standard. Right? The arrogance, the lack of self-awareness of one's own personal arrogance is to say that, well, what my plan is should be the standard for everyone. Anyway, the alchemical mandate. Listen to the occult nature of what we're listening to here.
Things like health and well-being, sustainable food, unleashing potential. And we have the water team, which is all about the return to communities and thriving communities. It's things like wealthy commons, community abundance, regenerative cities. And then we go to the fire team, which creates a mythology around the transformation of society, culture, and the economy. And then we have the earth team, which is all about the planetary age, living within planetary boundaries. It's things like planetary health, land stewardship, ocean stewardship. So each of those teams creates a mythology from a time outside of time where we've created this planetary civilization called the United Planet. And then that's where we go and reverse engineer the funding milestones. So we don't pay for competition, is the notion. It's a big, big idea. It's like, what if we could move $6 trillion to, instead of coming from now towards achieving the SDGs, that's 10% of the cost of the SDGs.
Right.
What if we could start a fund that was like a baby between smart contracts and social impact bonds, coming from the future to pull the transformation that we need that way?
So put some flesh around that. Just give me an example. You've told me about the different pillars, but tell me one story about how we're going to get to this world that we want.
Yeah, so my favorite story is called the planetary hat trick. It's it's my trick to get 3 in. So it's three major goals, planetary goals. One is the Gaian language. So in the game, we initiate players as Gaians. And we have a Gaian oath that goes like, we are a united planet. I am Gaian. On my honor, I commit to a thriving civilization in harmony with all life.
On my honor, because, my honor plus $5 will get you a cup of coffee at Starbucks. That equation means my honor is really not worth anything. Right, I mean, in the greater, when you're talking about out here in the world, because human creatures are not reliable, ultimately, right? You can't build a system. You can't build a nation on an honor system. You can't run a world order based on the honor system, and they know that. They know that. They already know that, and so this system is not going to be based on honor. Ultimately, to be in the system, you have to be limited by the system, by the hyper reality of it. Okay, well, you've seen this before. These people really believe that what they're doing is the right thing. Of all tyrannies, a tyranny sincerely exercised for the good of its victims might be the most oppressive. It'd be better to live under robber barons than under omnipotent moral busybodies, those who torment us for our own good without end, because they do it with the approval of their own conscience, right? I believe Lucian Tarnowski believes that what he's doing is truly the best thing. He doesn't have access to eternal truth. His eyes haven't been open to that, so he has no other standard to work from. But this idea, their so-called kindness stings with intolerable insult, right? Because you're being cured against your own will. And you're cured of things, of states which you didn't regard as a disease in the first place, right? Christianity, right? Being a follower of Christ, they see that as a disease that you need to be cured from, right? So it's like being classed with infants, imbeciles, and domestic animals. That's from C.S. Lewis, God in the Dock, essays on theology. So, this the alchemical mandate, what we spoke of just a moment ago. Let me just see if I can help you grasp this. The alchemical mandate, the occult mandate, as history has graphically demonstrated, the various religious crusades to immanentize the eschaton, which means to bring heaven to earth, to create a utopia. It's a religious utopia. right? To realize heaven on earth, and that it is a creation. It's something that man has created. They are deadly serious. This truth is tangibly evidenced by the atrocities committed by the socio-political utopians of secular Gnosticism. Both Auschwitz and the Soviet Gulag are products of the same jihad. The secular theocracies that have waged this jihad have consistently been scientific dictatorships edified by Darwinism, the theory of evolution, by survival of the fittest. Inevitably, the Gnostic myth of Darwinism guides its adherents to the same conclusion. Evolution requires man's assistance, guidance. Through societal intervention, socio-political utopians believe that humanity can facilitate its own evolutionary development and eventually bring utopia, immanentize the eschaton, realize heaven on earth, a man-made heaven. Freemason and Darwinian apologist Thomas Henry Huxley wrote, "Social progress means a checking of the cosmic process at every step, and the substitution for it of another, which may be called the ethical process, the end of which is not the survival of those who happen to be the fittest in respect of the whole of the conditions which exist, but the survival of those who are ethically the best. Ethically the best. Moral value judgments again." Let's go and take a look at Psalm 2. Because ultimately, the way we're going to find truth and understand how to live through this, how to think about it, how to find joy in the trials that come is from right here. Sorry about that. I lost my mic. Why do the nations rage and the peoples plot in vain? The kings of the earth take their stand, and the rulers gather together against the Lord. He who sits in the heavens laughs. Right, he knows. The Lord holds them in derision, then he will speak to them in his wrath and terrify them in his fury, saying, "As for me, I have set my king on Zion, my holy hill." And then in Psalm 64, verse 7, it says, "But God will strike them down with a sudden thunderbolt." Isaiah 54, verses 16 and 17 say this, "Behold, I created the weapon." This is the Lord speaking. He says, "I created the weapon maker." I created the one who makes the weapons, and I created the destroyer. I created the ravager. I created the one who made the weapon, and I created the one who is using the weapon. No weapon formed against you will succeed, and you will refute every accuser. This is the reward of the Lord's servants. In me they are righteous, says the Lord. Proverbs 3:32 says, "For the perverse person is an abomination." Psalm 25:14, "The Lord's loyal followers receive his guidance." And in other words, they're going to bring this judgment on themselves. Back to Shakespeare, full circle tonight. From Macbeth. We still have judgment here that we but teach. Bloody instructions which, being taught, return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poison chalice to our own lips. So in this rebellion, they poison themselves. Today, we live in a society where we're taught that the less effective a thing is, the more we should do it. Is that really progress? God is the creator, It must be worshipped in spirit and truth. Man can only create eternal life through simulations. The unholy plan of the global collective with human achievement as the God can only promise permanent insanity of self-worship. In other words, the metaverse. What is the noble lie? Well, we've certainly been here before. If I could just find that graphic, it would be great. A concept and practice that has throughout history been used as a tool for social engineering. The noble lie. I'm not having any luck. That's not it. Noble lie is about social engineering. It's a concept that is for guiding the masses in a desired direction, right? In politics, a noble lie is a myth or an untruth knowingly told and promoted by those in power to maintain social harmony or to advance an agenda or both. The term suggests that the author of the narrative, or the ones in control of power, is deliberately deceiving the people. In Plato's Republic, Socrates said it this way: we want one single grand lie, which will be believed by everybody. A massive untruth meant for the sole purpose of deception to create an outcome that the masses would not otherwise have been willing to accept. Make them think it was their idea. A small group of elites, for example, desire control over a great number of free persons and their free economy. Knowing these free persons would never agree to give them that control, these elites, with their power over politicians, markets, and the law itself, orchestrate an event. 9/11. Did I say that out loud?
It was a whisper.
What?
It was a whisper.
I didn't say that. You're hearing things. Well, they orchestrate an event or many events, Oklahoma City, or something like that. And what the result is that fear. I was going to say another one, but I'm going to stop right there. You know what we're talking about. You know what we're talking about. These things that happen and they come in, they're on the news, and it's traumatic, and it's just over and over. Events orchestrated, many events over many years, where fear is instilled in the people, and these same elites propose the solution to that fear via a preconceived solution, which is the control that they had planned all along. They might say something like, we all want to feel safe. Don't you want your children to be safe? Therefore, we must limit your traditional freedoms just for a little while, right? 2 weeks. 2 weeks to flatten the curve. That's all we need. Or let's shut this down over here so that the climate can recover. Or let's have you all stay at home for a month so the bad men can't reach you. Or to keep the new illness from reaching you. We don't want you to be infected. If people can be made to believe the lie or made too afraid to dissent, they will be strongly motivated toward compliance. Whether they're true believers or not, doesn't matter whether they really believe in it or not. We all err toward comfort or the path of least resistance. Understanding psychology very well, these elites know, as Summer said well a moment ago, they know psychology is, that's all they have. That would be their religion, or an element of it. These elites know that their lie or their myth must be one that creates a feeling of national or civic identity that is grounded in a singular purpose, religious. We're all in this together. We've got to rise up and stop Vladimir Putin. What? You don't support Ukraine? We might need to lock you up. Likewise, there must be a feeling of dread that comes and goes. Right? That's the way control is gained in a trauma-based mind control situation. A person is kept off balance constantly. A lot of fear followed by a little relief. Stockholm syndrome sets in, and then more and more fear followed by the promise of a little relief. A dismantling of a vibrant and healthy economy with fear and force followed by a little relief in the form of a check or a couple months relief for your failing small business. A global show of force in the form of lockdowns and lockups for those who dissent, followed by the promise of a return to freedom in our new, safer normal. But doesn't this sound kind of like what abusers do? How abusers take advantage of their victims? It sounds like that for a good reason. That's the psychology that's at work here. Dr. Malone, Robert Malone, wrote about mass formation psychosis, and it's a good theory, but you could call it mass formation psychosis if you want. You can call it menticide, the murder of the mind. You could call it evil. You can blame the elite. But in all that, you solve nothing. We must not overlook original sin and forget to acknowledge our condition. Mass psychosis is not the cause. Mass psychosis is the effect. Menticide is not the cause. Menticide is the effect. Evil is not a cause at all. Evil is an effect. We know the effect. Everyone can see the effect. What we need is to properly identify the cause, and the cause is sin. The effect of sin is a darkened mind, a reprobate mind. Repentance and God's grace, that's the answer. Through repentance and obedience to God, we will have the strength and minds to recover our nation if that's what God wills. But it's not our duty and our purpose to set out to have a revolution. It's not our duty and our purpose to take back America. Now, that might not sit on some people very well, but I'll tell you why that's the case. It might not be God's will for America to last one more year. And if that's the case, then it's just, it's right, it's holy, and it's good. It's not about what we want. It's not about what we desire or what we think should happen or the way things ought to be, because that's how we feel in our heart. Because we're almost always wrong. But if we continue to misidentify the effect as the cause, we're going to languish in error and fall further into depravity. The nation will fall further into depravity. So we cannot treat freedom like an idol. How is freedom lost? First, they convince you that freedom is impractical. It's a nice theory, but it's just not realistic. It's too costly. Then they convince you that freedom is insensitive. You're oppressive. Right? I love liberty too, but I also love people. Then they convince you that freedom is immoral. You're selfish. Arnold Schwarzenegger said, "Screw your freedoms." Is that pretty good?
One more time.
Screw your freedoms.
That was good.
I'm going to stop it. You're being selfish by putting your individual rights before all of this personal pain out here. Then they convince you to sacrifice your freedom on the altar of the greater good. Give us the power to legislate your behavior and dictate your decisions, and we promise to use that power in a way that benefits everyone. You can trust us because we know what's best. Then they go and destroy the world and pin the blame on you. This would never have happened if you had just given up your freedoms earlier. We wouldn't have had to have destroyed the world. It's your fault for being so selfish. And the cycle is repeated from age to age, with each new generation being duped into believing that authoritarianism was the sort of thing that could only go wrong in more primitive times. We're going to get socialism right this time because we're evolved, right? We have the United Planet game. We have Lucian Tarnowski to tell us how to go into the future and solve the problems. Remember that line from Macbeth. We still have judgment here that we but teach. Bloody instructions, which, being taught, return to plague the inventor. This even-handed justice commends the ingredients of our poisoned chalice to our own lips. They make a lot of metaphysical assumptions about morality, a lot of problems with the system. Wisdom from the creator of the universe, this earth, and all that's in it, from Proverbs 18. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. If you can't say amen, you ought to say ouch. That one hits home. A fool takes no pleasure in understanding, but only in expressing his opinion. I need to be heard. Right? To love truth is to have a willing and teachable spirit. The fool is chatty, vain, finds no fulfillment in eternal truths, creates complicated arguments with no practical purpose other than to show how clever the argument is. It's focused on self, not God. The shameful folly of, for instance, net zero, the green movement, or even the United Planet game, young global leader movement. Shameful folly of it all flows from this misplaced priority and the wrong place for finding solutions, for finding delight. Verse 4 there says, the words of a man's mouth are deep waters. The fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. The truth is simple. Truth is self-evident. It's straightforward. When someone has to convince you with Agenda 21, that thick, right? This is how we're going to save the world with 7 million pages of policies. Truth is simple. The words of a man's mouth are deep waters. Fountain of wisdom is a bubbling brook. Truth is simple. It's not complex. Do not pay attention to myths and endless genealogies, much like the endless, overly complicated arguments given by these young global leaders. Net zero is a snipe hunt. It's a red herring. It's a waste of time. The United Planet game is a waste of time. Worse than that, it's catastrophic. Verse 5, it's not good to be partial to the wicked or to deprive the righteous of justice. It's not good to be partial to the wicked or to deprive the righteous of justice. That means there must be justice. There is a standard, and we have to tell people what it is, and that's not going to be comfortable. If we have no eternal standard for determining wickedness from righteousness, we're going to be left to measure these things by our feelings. That's not going to turn out well. Because your feelings are the most unreliable thing about you. Very easily maneuvered by marketeers and persuasive opportunists. Why are so many people tempted to listen to someone who is so clearly opposed to the moral law of God? Misplaced compassion. out of a desire to please others, or the fear of man, which is a snare. Or to be liked and accepted by the majority. Or they have a vested interest somehow, either financial, social, or power. Verses 10 and 11 in Proverbs 18 says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower. The righteous man runs into it and is safe. A rich man's wealth is his strong city, and like a high wall in his imagination. Whenever the pressure kicks up or when a person is in fear, all creatures run to their refuges. Whenever someone feels the heat, they're being hunted, everyone runs to their refuges. It's very easy to see what a person worships. Verse 12, before destruction, a man's heart is arrogant, but humility comes before honor. The great Charles Spurgeon said, it is not humility to underrate yourself. It is not humility to underrate yourself. Humility is to think of yourself, if you can, as God thinks of you. There's no wisdom in self-exaltation. Other vices have some excuse, for men seem to gain by those other vices, avarice, pleasure, lust. They have some purpose, but the man who is proud sells his soul cheaply. He opens wide the floodgates of his heart to let men see how deep is the flood within his soul. Then suddenly it flows out, and all is gone, and all is nothing. For one puff of empty wind, the word of sweet applause, the soul is gone, not a drop is left. Very likely the most humble man in the world won't bend to anybody. John Knox, Scottish reformer, was a truly humble man. Yet if you had seen him march before Queen Mary with the Bible in his hand to reprove her, you would have thought, what a proud man. What do you think, son?
I think that we are so blessed to have God's word. It is really the lifeline right now.
It's never going to change, folks. That's why we do this. This is why we're so, we're adamant about this. We're just grateful that the Lord has allowed us to do this work. And we just want to tell the world that their truth can be known. It's our duty as Christians to discern properly the times in which we're living. And so the question is this a time for silence? Or is this a time for speaking out loudly? Not speaking out according to your own desires. It's like James talks about praying. Your prayers aren't answered because you pray amiss. You pray according to your own desires. Our prayers should be for God's will, right? To be used according to his will. Whatever his will for this nation is, what we want to do is stand for Christ in the middle of it. Is this a time for silence or for speaking out loudly? Surely depends on what you are going to say. Is this a time for peace or a time for war? Ecclesiastes 3. There's a time for everything. With a little help here from Matthew Henry, there is an appointed time for everything, and there is a time for every event under heaven. Man's laws have nothing to say about God's will. I can tell you that the new world order, this unified corpus of truth, global banking, it's never going to succeed. Not all together, not all at once. God will confuse those languages because he's sovereign in the times of good and he's sovereign in the times of evil. The beginning was in his word and the ending was too. Everything under heaven is thus changeable, but in heaven there is an unchangeable state. stable, and an unchangeable counsel, the truth. His decree has made all things occur according to his good pleasure, and he will judge the unrighteous. To those in Christ, he has given mercy already. There's a time to give birth and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to uproot what is planted, a time for God to plant a nation and a time to pluck up a nation to make room for another, a time to pluck up and to destroy when the nation has rejected its Redeemer. When that which was planted has grown fruitless and useless, it's time to pluck it up. Verse 3 says, there's a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up. Solomon didn't tell us there was a time for murder, premeditated, but there is a time to kill. A time to kill. When the judgments of God are brought on a nation, but in repentance through his mercy, then there is a time to heal, to comfort a people after the time that he has afflicted them. How would anyone ever understand God's mercy without his wrath? There's a time when it is the wisdom of rulers to use severe methods. Right? John Calvin said, when God wants to punish a nation, he gives them wicked rulers. There's a time when it's the right thing for rulers to use severe methods, because those rulers aren't there by their own power. They're only there because the sovereign God has allowed it for his purpose. But then there is a time when it is as much their wisdom to take a more gentle course and to apply themselves to remedies, not damages. There's a time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn, a time to dance, a time when God's providence calls us to mourn as in times of common calamity and danger, a time when it seems absurd to laugh, a time when it seems inappropriate to dance or to make merry. But then on the other hand, there is a time when God calls us to cheerfulness, a time to laugh and dance, and then he expects that we should serve him with joyfulness and gladness of our heart. Observe the time of mourning, and weeping is put first before laughing and dancing, because we must first sow in tears and then we can reap in joy. If you're in mourning right now, fear, worry, anxiety, angst about what you see in the world or in your own life, in your own heart, if you're in distress at all, know this, that God has promised that after the pain comes joy. John 16:22. Therefore, you too have grief now, but I will see you again. Your heart will rejoice, and no one will take your joy away from you. That's a promise from the Lord. There's a time to throw stones and a time to gather stones. In the ancient world, they commonly scattered stones on an enemy's land to hinder farming. There's a time to cast away stones by breaking down and demolishing fortifications in times of peace, but there is a time to gather stones together for the building of fortresses. A time for old towers to fall, as in Siloam, Luke 12:4. You can look it up. And a time for the temple itself to be so ruined that not one stone should be left upon another. But also there's a time for towers and mountains to be built when a nation is prospering. A time to embrace and a time to shun embracing. A time to embrace a friend when we find him unfaithful. but a time to refrain from embracing when we find he is unfair or unfaithful, and that we have cause to suspect him. There's a time to search and a time to give up for lost, a time to keep and a time to throw away. There's a time to keep when we need it and cannot afford in good conscience to lose it, but there may come a time that we have to give it all up. There may come a time when we're called to love God in such a way, we're called in love to God, to lose what we have. Specifically, if we must deny Christ and wrong our consciences to keep it. When love to ourselves may require us to lose it, when it is for the saving of our lives, as it was when Jonah's mariners heaved their cargo into the sea. There's a time to tear apart and a time to sew together, a time to be silent and a time to speak, a time when it becomes us and is our wisdom and duty to keep silent, if we might waste our words on those who cannot hear it, or when we might speak more words than we should have. But there's also a time to speak for the glory of God and the edification of others, when our silence would betray a righteous cause. It is a Christian's duty to know when to speak and when to hold our peace. Because there's a time to love and there's a time to hate. A time to love, to be friendly, to be free and cheerful. But there may come a time when you have to turn your back. There may come a time to hate, when we will have just cause to cut ties with some that have been friends or our nation. There might come a time when we have to cut ties with our own nation, when we have found a reason that is hard for us to even admit, and we cannot be parties to an open rebellion and sin. And there's a time for war and a time for peace. Time for war when God draws the sword for judgment and when men draw the sword for justice and the maintaining of their rights. When there is in the nations a disposition to war, then let us pray for peace. When the sword of the Lord shall be sheathed, there will be no war. When there is on all sides a disposition to peace, war should not last always, neither will peace be lasting in a fallen world. Understand what time it is in which we're living. This list also shows us the need to take full advantage of the time God gives us. Ephesians 5:16, Colossians 4:15. Many a man loses his soul, as Saul lost his kingdom, by not being aware or discerning the time in which he lives. Esau came too late, and so did the foolish virgins with their empty lamps. So I ask you again, is this a time for silence? Consider Daniel and his 3 friends in Babylon, standing faithful in all circumstances against the worst kind of judgment and pain. In the fiery furnace, not alone. All right, my friends, that'll be all for tonight. Thank you for being with us. And Summer?
Thank you, guys. Up next, we're going to have something for you about the Fed now, the banking situation, and the pandemic treaty that's coming up for 2024. So working on that for you guys now, and thank you for being with us.
Definitely. And thanks to Summer for the hard work she's done on that show that will be coming up. it's going to be a valuable show, and I'm proud of her. And I want to say that here live on the show because there's a lot of work that goes into this behind the scenes that no one ever sees. Hours and hours and days on end. And we're not complaining.
No, definitely not.
We are extremely blessed, and we want to thank you for being with us. If you'd like to support what we do, there's links in the description. You can go to armoroftruth.net to the donate tab if you like. And very soon, we'll have a mobile app for you to make things so much easier.
Yeah, that's really going to be great. Notifications will go out. But yeah, we just wanted to connect some more dots for you guys with the young global leaders, and Putin is part of it, and Justin Trudeau, and France's president, and on the list goes, and just connecting those dots for you guys to see how this is playing out in real time.
All right, my friends, God bless you. We'll see you again